Thursday, June 9th, 2022, Roanoke County School Board work session to order. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Here. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. All right, we'll jump right into the information items. 2.01, RCPS COVID-19 Health Plan. Dr. Stigall.
Check to switch me over. Okay. All right, so I know we're all tired of talking about COVID. However, we can't get grant money unless we have an updated COVID plan. So we have done that. CDC just sent out May 27th an update for K-12 schools for operation under the current times with COVID-19. So read through all those, matched them with what we currently have. I've actually gone through the plan and basically removed everything except for the basics, right? So the basics would be etiquette, none of the masking, none of the distancing, none of those things are in there. So it's basically what our nurses do, our stay to play, state test to stay in school protocol, what our teachers, we're giving them 5 days instead of 8 days of leave. We've made some tweaks in it, but basically we've taken out all the restrictions, kept the basics in there, and scaled it down. The idea for that is as we move forward, if things come up, we can always go back and add them if we need to. So it's been drilled down to the basics. Everything in the CDC guide that they sent out, we already had in there. So that stuff remained because it's global. It's not anything that's pertinent to changes in our division. It's just basic ventilation. The same ventilation we talked about at the end of school year, they repeated that same information in this updated plan. So all that stuff remained the same. Our protocols remained the same. You can take a look at it. We've posted it on the website for review, and I'm happy to take any feedback. We do open it up for public comment, so if anybody would like to send us public comment, we do take that and consider that for review. So that is currently posted on our website. Any questions about that?
You just have to present it to us, that's all.
That's it, yeah. And it has to be updated by June every 6 months
Yeah.
for us to get grant money.
You mentioned the test to stay. Is that still in place?
It is, yes. We have asked to re-up that for next year. That's been very, we had a lot of support from parents when kids would get COVID or teachers would, they'd be exposed to COVID. So rather than keep them out of school, as long as they didn't show symptoms, they could test to stay. So we would give them those 5 tests. They would test every day. As long as it was a negative, they can continue to come to school. So we did have really good participation in that.
And they're doing that at home on their own?
They are, yes.
I think I did see in the news yesterday where the numbers were starting to come back down to the valley. That's good news.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? All right,
Okay.
thank you. 2.02, safety plans for the 2022 and 2023 school year.
Yeah, so we have been looking into some options for safety. Our lobby guard system that checks guests into all of our front offices at our schools, they have been bought by Raptor, this company Raptor. So we started listening to Raptor, and they had this safety suite. So Jeff and I watched that, and we were very impressed with that safety suite. So we asked them to do a little deep dive with us to let us take a look at what that's all about. And so here's what we are currently under contract with them and moving forward. So here are some of the things that they're going to offer us. So we'll continue to maintain what we used to have as a lobby guard that will be run by Raptor. There is a drill management system. What that will look like is there's an app that can be downloaded to every teacher's phone, every administrator's phone, or on the laptops. And so what will happen is we do a fire drill every single month of the school year, and then we have 2 lockdown drills. So this is one of those systems where it's not going to be a safety system that sits on a shelf and we pull it out because of emergency. It's going to be on an app system, and we're going to teach teachers and staff how to use it every single month, because as we go through our drill cycle, they're going to have to use the app every time we do a drill. So that way they're familiar with the app, it reminds them that they have the app, and it's going to be a regular part of practice. So what will happen is we have a fire drill, They will exit the building. The teachers will go out with their classrooms. They will take attendance like they do now. The difference is it will be all electronic. It will be on their app. It automatically sends the information to the principal, who has a dashboard. They can quickly see that all students are accounted for. They can end the drill and go back inside. If students are not accounted for, then they have a plan in place to go and find those students. So that is a system that we will put into place at the beginning of the school year. And that's really, it's matched up with Synergy, which is our database system. So it's updated every 8 hours. So we will never be more than 8 hours. If a new student enrolls, it will be updated within 8 hours. So it's a very accurate system. The current system that we have a roll in a go bag, and if it's a substitute and not the current teacher, they pull out that roll. Lots of times that roll is not updated the way it should be, so this is a much more robust system for us for our drills. That goes a little bit farther into the reunification process, which I'll touch on in just a minute, but there's also this great part of this app that is something that we currently don't have. So now when we have to go into lockdown, we allow our teachers, every staff member in all of our buildings can go to any phone that we have in any building that we have and punch in a code, and then that code automatically sends an announcement out to lockdown. So that's what we're currently using. The fault with that is the person who calls the lockdown still has to dial 911 because that system does not connect to 911. So that's been a flaw that we've had in our system all along. This system, when on the app, all the teachers have to do is pick up their phone or their laptop, hit the app, open it up, and there's a panic button. So they hit the panic button. It asks them one more time, do you want to lock down the school? They swipe it and say yes. It will reach our announcement system in all of our schools. It will say lockdown, lockdown. It'll send a message to every single person's phone who is connected. It will come through all of the active boards and show an alert message on every active board. So in Texas, they did have Raptor. Just read an article from our salesperson who sent it to us that somebody did send out the notification, locked down the school 30 seconds before the man entered. The door was unlocked. That's how he got in. And then obviously a classroom was not locked. So that was a concern there. But the Raptor app did go off 30 seconds prior to entry. So, there's some things we can learn from that. One is there was a teacher who reported that they didn't get the alert. Well, they found out the reason they didn't get the alert because the teacher didn't go in and put the alerts in their app. So that's something we've got to do is get every teacher on the app, make sure they have all the notifications turned on. This system also has an Amber Alert override. So when a school goes in lockdown, it overrides all silences on the phones. So it's one of those things where you don't have to worry about your volume being up or it's going to override all that. So I think that's a part of our system that we currently don't have. That's a very good part of this system is the automatic lockdown situation, and it automatically calls 911. The great thing about when it calls 911, when we use our app, it automatically tells you who's calling, the address to the school, that the school was put on lockdown, who put the school on lockdown, the teacher's name, the teacher room number. They have all that information without even having to talk to 911. So that's something that we currently don't have as well. Then as soon as they lock down the school, a messaging component is available. So then that person who locked down the school can communicate with all staff or just administration why they just locked the school down. And then it also allows a messaging system to where all the teachers and the staff can communicate on one line. So a principal can get on and say, staff, we are in lockdown, reminder, make sure you keep your kids quiet, do this, can give more information. Sometimes lockdowns last for a significant amount of time, and staff get very restless when they don't know what's happening. So this is a good way to communicate with staff while they're in lockdown. So I think this is a great tool that we currently don't have. And then reunification. So we've been working on reunification. We have been using the national organization called I Love You Guys. And it is a very robust program, and everything's there for free. Well, it just happens that Raptor works hand in hand with I Love You Guys program. So what's great about that is, so let's say that we do lock down. The teachers in the classroom, they open up their app, they're taking attendance. And then on this one, if there happens to be a critical incident, there's a place to take attendance, but there's also a place to say, these 3 students are injured right now. So what that does is there's a dashboard. So if you can imagine there's 100 classrooms. While we're in lockdown, all the teachers are sending information to this dashboard. I can see the dashboard, several of us here at Central can, and the principals can. They can see the information coming in immediately. That information is also available to police and fire and rescue who will be responding. So they'll know how many's injured, what room they're located in, all that information.
Rhonda, how do they get that information?
They can have access
They
to
have
our
access to the
dashboard.
app.
That's
Okay.
correct, yes. And then, so let's say I'm a teacher and they've cleared the classroom and now we're going to get on a bus. So I'm taking all my kids out, I get on the bus, I go to my app, I change my location to bus 137, and then now everybody who's watching the dashboard knows that this classroom, I'm the teacher, I have all these kids in tow and we're on this bus. Then they get to the reunification site, they put in, arrived at the reunification site. Now we know that classroom is at the reunification site. Then we go through another attendance process where we make sure we, again, have all the kids that we left the school with now at the reunification site. So the great part about it, it's a very quick and digital way to maintain attendance and records. We have a backup system that I have an intern here, Bonnie Reedy, who's been she's helped put all this together because it was a massive task. But what she has done is created all the paper documents that's the backup to the system. So everything that we're doing digitally, she's created the backup version. So in case something happens and phone systems go down, we do have a backup plan for that. So that's what reunification looks like, but all of this goes hand in hand with the Raptor system. The great thing about Raptors, they provide training for all of our staff, and they do that one-on-one. So what that basically is, it's a WebEx to where they are in front of a school faculty. They tell everybody to get their phones out. They download the app. They walk them through it. They send them an alarm to make sure everybody got the alarm. They make sure it's working before they leave. And they troubleshoot while they're there, because you can imagine that's the problem with all the different versions of cell phones and all the different struggles people have. The biggest struggle of all of this is getting it on people's phones and showing them how to use it. So they will walk us through all of that.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry to interrupt. Substitute T-shirts, will we make sure all subs have that?
So the problem with that is a problem. You're exactly right. So our substitute teachers, if we have long-term subs or subs that regularly come to our buildings, it's very easy for us to train them how to do that. However, we would really want subs too that only have this, that stay at the majority of their time at one school, because what happens is there's a drop-down button. So let's say we have a Spanish teacher who teaches at 4 different schools, right? So when they open up their app, they have a drop-down of their 4 schools. They have to pick which school that they want to lock down. So it's a little bit more, it's a one more step for them, right? The great thing is there's a safety net to that, because what we can do, or they can do, is they put a grid around the school. And if you're at Glenver and you set off north side's lockdown, it will not lock down if you're outside of the vicinity. So it's a little bit of a safety net. So let's say a parent has this app at home and their little kid gets on playing with the phone and locks down the school. It won't lock down the school if you're not in the school. So that's a nice little safety feature that it has. But with substitutes who are not long-term, that just come in random schools on random days, no, this will not work for them. The problem is we'd have to give them all 27 schools, and then it's just the training of it. Raptor has basically recommended that we don't even attempt that, because they have just seen that it does not work. So we will have a hole, but I think it's better to have that little hole than having a big hole like we have now, right? So we can accommodate for the majority of our kids very, very quickly. Our administrators will know, because you'll see the dashboard will say, well, I'm missing 25 kids and they all seem to be in so-and-so's class. Quickly, you're going to know that all those kids there's a substitute problem.
If I may add to your question, we have some teachers who are older folks. What about their cell phone use, knowledge, and access?
We can either train them on their cell phones or they can train from their laptops.
But what if they don't have,
So,
what if
yeah,
they're
they
on the
may
flip
not.
phone?
They'll just have to use laptop.
okay.
Because everybody's issued a laptop.
Everybody, right.
Yeah, so. We're also
Mr.
giving.
Mr. Ray had a question, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, well, You talk, since we're on the cell phones,
Yes.
you know, you have spotty service at all the schools. Sometimes, if you got a certain service, you don't even have it in the school.
We're going to train them while we're in this session, is we're going to make sure that they're backed up to our server, because right now if I cut my phone on, anytime I walk into a Roanoke County Schools, it hits our server. We're going to make sure that all of our staff phones have that, because you're exactly right. If you're in the middle of a school and you're not tapped into our server, you're not going to get that. So, and you're not going to have access to the app. So we're going to make sure while we're doing that training with the cell phones that we have everybody signed into Roanoke County Schools.
Now, will the server only do it for Raptor, or do they takes them onto the server for anything?
For anything,
Oh, okay.
it does.
And that password doesn't change monthly? It'll
No,
automatic
no, it's
access.
automatic, right. And what's great is no matter, like, when we go out to schools, it automatically connects. So you don't have to change when you go into a different school.
And then it's for teachers, staff, everyone that may be sharing schools or
Yeah,
whatever?
I mean, I highly recommend we give it to custodial staff, cafeteria staff, IAs, anybody who wants it should have it, because my belief is everybody should be able to lock the school down. And I
Any-
think we give them that access to do that.
Have you been to any places that you've seen this work?
I have not, no. They've
Anybody-
demonstrated it for us, is about all that we've seen.
Anybody local use it?
No, well, I think Frederick, there is one local.
There's a lot of Virginia schools.
A lot of Virginia schools. I think Virginia Beach was one of them she mentioned.
Yeah, we're really on the leading edge of this, in our region, so. And clearly, when it comes to these kinds of things, we don't like to necessarily get into a lot of the weeds and details in a public setting. So we'll kind of leave things at a, little higher level, but, one thing that I would just, give a shout out to is, this is hugely a step in the great direction, in terms of just, our attitude is always, don't take anything for granted, never make assumptions, really drill down to details. But I know, our law enforcement officials have commented over and over again, when they go out and do national presentations, statewide presentations, and they hear what happens in other places, they're always amazed and so grateful for the level of cooperation that we have here locally, because we really do, whether it's cooperating and welcoming, involvement from, the sheriff's office who've been great, police office, fire and rescue. I mean, it's really all hands on deck and everybody on board. We welcome all of our public safety folks to really help us with these issues, because it really does take everybody, and so we're really grateful for everybody working together on these things. This is definitely some good tools that we can put in the hands of our schools. It integrates so well with the digital mapping piece that you're probably going to talk a little bit about, which goes with a grant that we got from the state that Ms. Peterson's going to bring a little bit later in the session to get your approval on. So a lot of pieces just really coming together to really help us to even more improve public,
One more
school
question.
safety.
Mr. Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Raptor at night. And you have something, is this gonna come through the phones and wake everybody up? Or what's going on?
So no, if you have to be in the building to set the school and lock down. So,
But they're not gonna get a notification anyway at all until they get
yeah,
back?
we will get a notification. If it's locked down from outside the school, we all get notified. But it doesn't send out massive alerts to everybody. It sends it to administration. I'm assuming it'll come to me or whoever else is identified down here. And then one thing that she did say, we just need to be prepared for, when we go into lockdown, it sends an Amber Alert to everybody who's registered. So there have been people who have been at funerals in the middle of the day and the Amber Alert has gone off. And you know how Amber Alerts work. They're loud, and so that does happen. So, we just need to be prepared for that, because that is part of it.
But again, that's just staff. That's not
It's
going out to the
staff.
public or parents
That's
or anything
right.
like that at that point.
Yeah, it's just staff at that point.
It's a small price to pay.
It is,
Yeah.
you're right. People just need to learn to keep their phones in their car during those situations, I guess.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
so here's the timeline that Raptor has given us, and we're working with them. We actually meet with them weekly on the phone and walk through our timeline, and they're constantly giving us tasks to complete. This is a major task to get accomplished by the start of the school year. We're talking that we have to get 27 schools, all the teachers and their cell phones up and ready to roll. So it is going to take a lot of hustle to get there, but that is our goal, to have everything in place by the first day of school. That's with the drill manager and the alert system. That would be the automatic lockdown system. The reunification system, we're working to move forward with that. We're hoping to have that in. We at Central will all be trained. We'll have our reunification sites designated. We will have practice. We will be ready to go. And our schools will, there's a whole nother part of that to help schools prepare for reunification. And Bonnie Reedy's working on that with me at William Byrd Middle. She's going to pilot that at William Byrd Middle, go through that, create all the documents that then we can transfer to the other schools so we're not all having to reinvent the wheel. So we're also going to send out a safety message to all of our staff at the beginning of the year to show them everything that we've done for Roanoke County Schools, because I think everybody needs to understand how much we've done for their safety. We want them to feel safe to come to work every day, and we want them to know how seriously we take it. And I think it's important. Sometimes we think everybody knows all the things we're doing, but Bonnie came on to the committee and she said she was blown away as a teacher. She had no idea that we did as much with safety. I think that goes a long ways when we let our staff know how much we're doing to protect them. And then, of course, we're asking them to protect our children. So I think in order for them to do that, we have to make them feel protected. So I think it just goes hand in hand. And then, of course, we'll eventually get the reunification through all 27 schools. So that is our timeline there. The next part is House Bill 741 requires school boards to create detailed and accurate floor plans for each school building. So there was, we started calling around to see what this meant, and I filled out the MOU. We sent it to DCJS. We just got approved for that. We were approved for $98,000, and that covers 28 schools. So that's our 27 schools and Central, because we have A-STEP here, and that's all facilities on all 28 campuses. And so it's basically what we do there. It's a critical response group that we're going through, and they're creating our maps. So they are creating high-resolution imagery maps that have all the key locations, classroom numbers, hallways, door access, which doors have the key fob access, where the AEDs are located, where the utility cutoffs are at. It also covers all of our athletic facilities. The great thing about these maps, we have been working with the police department for several years now, because we're trying to get them access to our cameras, trying to get them access to everything that they could use when they're responding. And this is an amazing system, because this system already works with the satellite system that sends information to 911 dispatch center. So what will happen is, as soon as we lock down, it'll automatically send a message to 911. It will also send the map of the school, the digital map. The map will go out to all police officers responding, all fire and rescue responding. Everybody will have the digital map associated with that building. Those who sign up for the app, for the Raptor app, the Raptor app will also have the digital maps available to individuals who are carrying a cell phone if they don't. If they're not in a police car. So it just gives great access to fire and rescue and PD. Most of that, the most important thing of all of that is really access of how they're going to get in the building. The quickest way we can get them in the building with their access code is to our advantage. So that should help greatly. This is the company that we're using, Collaborative Response Graphic, and you can see there just they used them for special operations in the military when they were searching for Osama bin Laden, I mean. You can see they have the map sitting right there. And so this is the technology they use. These are retired special agents who have used the technology and brought it down they've been working with universities, civic centers, large-scale arenas, providing them safety, and now they're doing it for school divisions. And so here's what one will look like, and you can see it has all the classroom numbers and everything's identified on the map. And this is just, you can see this map's much larger than what I'm showing here, because I had to cut it to get it all on here. So it expands the entire campus. You can go in and out. Eventually, the capability we hope will be to put the cameras in here so we can have live camera access in connection with our camera placement. This year, we're working on getting the maps. Next year, we're working on camera placement.
That information won't be public, though.
No. The only people who have this information would be us. It will be in the safety manuals for the principals and administrators in the back of their safety plans, and fire and rescue and police will have it. Also, state police. all jurisdictions will have access. Salem, since they support Burton, and of course Benton PD. And then the I Love You Guys reunification plan, with the help of Bonnie, she went through and ordered everything we needed. We have it all ready to go. We have summer training that we're going to do here at Central, take them to the sites that we designate. We're actually going to have maps so they know where to set up. Basically what that looks like, there's about 8 of us at Central who have been given a commander task, and they have this assignment book, so they have 5 to 10 people under them who have jobs and tasks. This is a very detailed and very complicated system, but you only have to worry about what you're responsible for, and then it should all come together. So what that would look like is we would send a message to everybody here at Central. Unification team needs to report to this school immediately. We have somebody who will come pick up all the items that we need to be transferred. We have laptops, we have plugins, we have printers, we have these books, we have everything you could possibly think of, signs that need to go to that location. Then staff will get there, they'll pull out these binders. You can see the binders are ready to go. They have name tags for everybody. They have pens ready to go. You can write on the outside of this checkoff sheet of everything you need to do. It has individual task sheets for every person. It has a diagram for who reports to who. And it just goes, it has everything in here you need. So it's a very quick package deal, open it up and go. So all the papers that they need for backup reunifications, all there. We even have them in Spanish. It is probably a truckload of stuff that has to go. We already have the parking signs printed. We have the A-frames for them to go on. It's just one of those things that we're ready. We have all the items here. Now we just got to train, and we're going to go and actually do an event at one of our locations. We actually took the representative from Raptor with us to the Parkway Church on the mountain, which is one of our sites, and they walked through and were very impressed with that location. So they help us map it out, and then that will be our first location with their support, and then we will designate the other locations as we go.
Just a point of clarification, again, it's kind of a high level. So reunification sites are actually off school site. This is where people relocate, after.
Yeah. And so this is just another picture of what it looks like for all the information that we need that we take with us. All right, that's all for that one.
30 seconds on background on I Love You Guys. What's that? Is that?
So what that is, it's a foundation that was created, and Sandy Hook, after that happened, elementary, and there was some shootings. One of the kids texted and said, "I love you guys," to their parents when there was a school shooting, and so that parent took it and ran with it, and now the Sandy Hook organization, they've all come together and they're supporting it. Sandy Hook organization is supported by tons of businesses and organizations, so it's all free. So they've gone and created this system, and now actually you can go online and pull and download every bit of it for free.
Nice.
So it's a very impressive. It's also for law enforcement, fire and rescue. They all have their own book. So we all work together. So we've already decided we're going to have a meeting with fire and rescue, police, give them their books. We can all talk about what that's going to look like, because if we're not all on the same page, reunification will be very, very difficult. So we all have to know what's happening, because it comes fast and everybody's in a panic mode, and it's a very difficult situation.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Mr.
John,
Ritter.
thank you. And the implementation you're trying to get in this year,
Yes.
what about the training for the teachers and all the staff?
So the reunification, we've already trained the principals. They've had 2 different trainings on that. They're going to go back, and they have to have annual safety meetings with all the staff at the beginning of the school year. So in that annual safety meeting, they're also going to cover reunification. And then what we're going to do is designate, we're going to have 5 or 6 sites that we will randomly select the site once we have an event. So when the event happens, we'll call the principal. While we're in the middle of the event, we'll say, "You're going here." And so we will not designate which one of the sites they will be going to until the event is in motion. And so we can't take them to the site to practice, but this team here at Central will have practiced at all of them. So all the schools need to do then is focus on how they're going to take the school student body, get them on buses, and get them to the site. So the plan that Bonnie's going to be working on is that plan for the school. How is the school going to, from lockdown, to take the kids, put them on the bus, and get them in a reunification site. So they will be working on that throughout the beginning of this school year. but the reunification plan will be ready to go. And teachers will be trained on the basics of it at the start of the school year, and they will be trained on the Raptor, how to lock down the school, and all that will be on their phones. It's a lot.
It is.
It's a lot.
And then they're monitoring monthly. I know the initial we'll get in place, and then they'll monitor each month, and we'll pay for services each month, right?
Well, we paid up front for this year, and so we have it throughout the rest of the year. But what's great is that I really love the fact about the drill manager, because it worries me when we have all these crisis plans that sit on somebody's shelf and they look at it in August, they never pick it up again. So I really like the idea of this app, because we're forcing them to it every single month. Because every time we have a drill, they're having to refresh themselves on that. And it makes them think about, whoa, what if this was a lockdown? And you'll be surprised how many times we do put schools on lockdown for random outside occurrences, and that yet again, they will get to practice. So I think it really drives the message home on, always being cognizant of safety and keeping that, get them in practice of keeping the phone with them. Teachers aren't necessarily used to that, so that's one of the things they're going to have to get used to.
I actually have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So do parents get, I know admin would get notifications, but as parents, you can sign up for alerts. I believe parents get alerts when schools are locked down, is that right?
They do through Chuck.
Through Chuck?
Yes.
That will not change?
No,
Okay.
that won't change, no. And our practice there is we try to give messages every 20 minutes.
Okay.
That's our current practice, is we try to keep everybody informed every 20 minutes.
Very good work there, Rhonda. Great planning, great training. I hope we never have to implement it.
I hope so too.
2.03, discussion of sixth graders playing middle school sports.
Okay, so looking into this a little bit, realize we have what's called the Roanoke Valley Middle School League. That is a league that's actually created and managed by Roanoke County Public Schools. So back in the day, Roanoke County Public Schools created this league and to help manage middle school athletics. So the league contains all 5 of our middle schools. Then you have Andrew Lewis Middle, Central Academy, and then Reed Mountain. They're the other 3 additions to that. There are a couple schools they play occasionally in certain sports, but they're not a part of the league. So here's what their bylaws say in this league currently. It says no participation is allowed for 6th graders. They may serve as managers. Their duties may include bookkeeping, setting up fields, filling water bottles. 6th graders may not practice or scrimmage with the team. That's their current practice. They also have what is, for football, they currently have modifications built in. They're called 5th quarters. The reason, and some of them have B teams. Basically, for 7th and 8th graders, a lot of times, even with the 7th and 8th graders, there are people who don't get playing time. And since middle school sports are designed to help with skill development, they want to get as much playing time as possible, so they've developed what's called a 5th quarter. They do that in football. They also have a modification of what's called a developmental game. And they sometimes play that on Mondays outside of their typical schedule to give, again, more opportunity for playing time. Basketball, volleyball, and soccer also play what's called, they don't necessarily call it a 5th quarter, but they call it an extra play or whatever they call it in that individual sport. But it is essentially an extra a 5th quarter. So most of the sports there do give opportunities for kids to, and their focus is really on playing time.
But
I know-
that's for just 7th and 8th graders. in
Just
the
7th and 8th
quarter, Right,
graders.
so that doesn't actually include 6th graders in
No.
the 5th quarter?
No.
Just to
nope,
clarify.
Not at all. All right, so what I did is I sent out emails. So just sent an email to all high school and middle school ADs and attached both sets of principals on there and said, can you ask them some questions? Basically, what are some pros and cons for allowing 6th graders to play sports? What is, do you think that if we were to pull out, if the 5 Roanoke County schools were to pull out of the league, do you think you'd have trouble building the schedule? And just ask them, do you see any, anything, just share anything that you would like to regarding 6th graders playing the sport. So what I did is just took all that feedback and shared it here. So I know that's very hard to read, but under the pros, it basically says that one of the pros is it will help fill teams who have lower numbers when JV teams pull kids up from 8th grade. So a lot of times those 8th graders are pulled up to play JV. That is high school ADs and principals didn't really give a lot of feedback. They gave some. There's no way I could really tell you what I thought the high school people really believe, because it impacts them so differently, right? Because some of their schools that have low numbers, they need to pull up more kids. Some schools that don't have low numbers, they don't need to pull up a lot of 8th grade kids. So it was all over the place. Even in some schools, you have teams where you wouldn't pull up 8th graders, but other teams, you thrive off of the 8th graders, right? Because you have low numbers. So even within each individual school, it really is sport by sport. But they definitely pull up 8th graders. So that would be a pro for that if you allowed 6th graders, the 6th graders could fill the replacement where the 8th graders move up to JV. It allows for the 6th graders who are developmentally ready to participate in middle school sports. It helps potentially with skill development for those students. And it gives them access to the middle school coaches or the middle school, high school program if they're working together. Cons, middle school concept, basically a majority of all the middle school principals said this, that the middle school concept is, their focus is on transition, and it's a difficult transition from elementary to middle, and kids have a very difficult time now transitioning to the middle school. And they felt like that the additional schedule of a sport would cause some concern there.
Hey, Rhonda, can I stop for a second?
Uh-huh.
I think we probably ought to talk back and forth a little bit for each subject instead of hitting it all at once and then coming back to it.
You know what, Brian, I prepared something to talk about afterwards, if you want to wait till that.
That's fine. If you want to keep reading that.
That's fine.
I mean, because I've got a lot of insight on this because
Okay.
I coached middle school football, baseball, wrestling. I've coached rec league as well, so I
Okay.
understand where it all comes from. And, but anyways, we can wait till the end. I just didn't want you
That's
to.
okay, either way you want me to do it. And so some of them had concerns about if you cut 7th and 8th graders to make room for 6th graders, you're lessening the opportunity for those 7th and 8th graders. Most all of them came back with concern for expense, uniforms, transportation, equipment, especially for teams that don't have tryouts. So we'd have to change that structure if we were to go in this direction, because I don't think we could say we're not going to have tryouts, and we couldn't allow just every 6th grader who wanted to play, because we would have a significant increase in coaching needs, uniform needs, because we currently don't have enough to support that. So football, track, and wrestling are sports that currently do not have tryouts. So that would be something that would have to be addressed. Safety concerns with contact sports. A lot of them said there's a huge physical maturity gap between 6th and 8th grade. They like the current system. More kids would get cut from teams. This was one school came back with a facility capacity that they are concerned about having the space for all the open gyms, because if you have an open gym, you've got to allow everybody who wants to potentially try out. That requires more supervision, more space, more everything. So that was a concern about facility capacity. Getting cut as a 6th grader may discourage them to try out the next years. May have a concern with filling schedules. I'm not sure. I really couldn't get a good feel, because I think there are other schools out there that they could certainly pick up. I think it would be a little bit more effort for them to do that, but I do think they could fill a full schedule. And then when I did eventually poll all 5 of our middle school principals, and all 5 of our middle school principals were against allowing 6th graders to play on our teams. We did survey and had received comments back from the other 3 schools in the league, and all 3 of those schools did not want to allow 6th graders to play in the league. So that's the feedback that we received.
David, so Rhonda, thank you for putting that together. I know it's a lot of work, a lot of communication, and a lot of emails back and forth. I've been talking about this for a long time, and if you don't mind, I've done my homework also. I've talked to a lot of people in the community, and I'd just like to share some information, because I think as a board, it'd be nice to have as much information as possible, and that way it'll be helpful and help us make our decision. So I have a packet you can take one if you want. So I just started to write down some thoughts, and I thought, I'd better just put this all down. So you can pass one. I think there's like 6 or 7 copies in there. So anyway, in terms of creating opportunity for 6th graders to play middle school sports, this I think comes up every single year for parents. At least that's what I'm hearing. This is not the first time that this has been discussed. Allowing sixth graders the opportunity to try out for middle school sports, creates a myriad of benefits. And in this packet, you'll see what those benefits are. And truthfully, nobody can gainsay that the importance of fitness and overall health for our kids and exercise. I mean, it's undoubtedly true. We need our kids to be participating in fitness and exercise. So all middle school students should be given equal access. They should all be given the opportunity, mostly because parents cannot all afford the financial costs of rec sports. Sports can cost upwards of $175 depending on the organization. Travel sports cost a lot of money, we know that. And not every parent has the time to take their kids to rec sports. When you keep sports at the schools at the sixth grade level, those kids who earn their spot, they have to try out and earn their spot, those kids have access to something that might not otherwise have access to because of financial reasons or just, time that the parents have to be able to put in. Of course, they can always carpool home, so they will have to get a ride home. So Roanoke County Public Schools should consider giving all kids equal opportunity because, look, they're all at middle school. They all are called middle school students, sixth grade, seventh grade, and eighth graders. And my understanding is that about 15 years ago when this league got going and this Roanoke Valley Middle School League came about, it was a little bit of a handshake between some coaches who felt like we should not have sixth graders participating in sports because of one reason or another. I'm not going to go into it, but that is what I heard. So in terms of the comprehensive benefits to this is all basic stuff. You guys all know this, but I think it's important to highlight them and to get them down on paper so you can stop and think about what are the benefits of sports for all our students in our schools. And I don't think you can debate any one of these. Character building traits. Studies suggest that playing sports develops a child's self-confidence and of course, self-esteem. I'm sure you all remember when you were a kid, you got that first high five from your coach or a pat on the back, a handshake. These are all things that boost kids' self-confidence. We need constructive criticism. It's key for kids to, accept and to work on weaknesses. Managing emotions. We have kids with a lot of emotional issues today, and learning to channel those negative emotions can be tough for kids. And a good coach will help them realize how to manage those stressful moments and propel them to do better and deal with other life challenges in the future. Discipline. This is simple. You're following rules, you're obeying coaches, you're practicing restraint, all forms of discipline. And discipline, we know, enables kids to reach their full potential. And that's exactly what we want in our students. And it goes on, social skills. Learning to interact with other kids. Just walking into school and knowing a seventh grader or an eighth grader, knowing other people, it creates opportunity to make new friends. Especially after COVID, we know that these kids don't have that social interaction and they're all struggling with their social emotional skills. Patience, this is something really, you gotta be patient, and it takes patience to get better, and when you put in the time, you're gonna see results. Perseverance, when you're out on that sports team, on that sports field playing with your friends, you've got highs and lows, you've got good times and bad times, and children need to see that, through the bad times, there are going to be some good times, and it builds resistance. And practicing perseverance at a young age does promote coping skills and better critical thinking skills for them to help face adversity later on down the line. Accepting defeat. Nobody likes to lose, but we all know that sometimes you learn more from losing than from winning. So this helps kids learn how to accept defeat and, of course, to lose graciously. Teamwork. I don't think anybody can debate this. Teamwork is essential. It helps kids to become less selfish. They see that everybody's a part of something and they all work together. Respecting authority, setting rules, accepting decisions, taking direction. And we'll go on just the last four right here. Of course, we've got leadership skills, lifelong habits of health and nutrition, the physiological benefits, blood sugar, cardiovascular, and of course, performance enhancement. Participating in athletics has been known to improve cognitive abilities, memory functions of the brain, and it's been shown that kids perform better academically. And these are traits of discipline and perseverance that are going to play a greater role for them later on in their academic performance. So the current system, I would beg to differ. I don't think it's working well at all. If it were working well, we would not be witnessing 12 eighth graders getting pulled up to play JV at Hidden Valley Soccer. That one example. We had 6 eighth graders that got pulled up for the JV softball team. We have sports with no JV teams, and that's because simply they can't find the athletes. We've got middle school teams who, as a result, it affects them. When a coach takes 8 eighth graders, 12 eighth graders for another team, it leads the rest of the middle school teams to suffer. Every year, I am hearing from the ADs that they have to make, the high school ADs, they have to make a decision. Should they be pulling up those eighth graders or should they leave them behind? So they know if they pull up those eighth graders that the middle school teams are going to suffer. Demographics, Ken, you put out something on demographics the other day to us as a group, and we all know our demographics are shifting. There's no doubt people are having fewer children, our enrollment is down. Size of schools, it's debatable where we're heading with that, but the numbers don't lie. I'm not a demographic statistician, but we know that we're having issues with kids playing sports. And we are no longer living in the year of 1995. The National Federal of State High School Associations actually reported a decline in 2018 and 2019. This was the first decline in 30 years in high school sports. The downward trend continues. And the pandemic, as it did with a lot of things, it only accelerated the decline. So this is the perfect storm. We have decreased enrollment. We have a downward trend with pre-COVID that we were seeing, and now we're post-COVID. And it's a precipitous drop. Athletic directors around the nation, it's not just Roanoke, it's not just Virginia, but they're sounding the alarm and they're saying we're not going to have kids that are going to be playing in high school or middle school sports. So the goal, really, and this is a really important concept, is not to replace 7th and 8th graders. The goal merely is to fill the slots that have been left open. So every time we pull up these 8th graders to JV, we've got open slots. We've got teams that just aren't able to happen. And I don't want to be that school board member that is a part of the letter that goes out to my constituents that say we can't field a middle school team because we just don't have the athletes. The old adage that we've always done it this way, it's really dangerous, and anybody that knows business and organizations of business knows that it's the demise of an organization. The mindset, this is how we've always done it, gives little hope in keeping pace with competition. And the perfect example of this I use frequently is just Blockbuster. Just look to Blockbuster. They're not around anymore. There's a lot of other companies that I could list too, but that mentality is just not one that I embrace, and I will never embrace it. Safety. I think safety is a big deal, and I get that. However, the precedent that's been put into place, right now we are allowing 8th graders to compete against 10th graders, with and against 10th graders. So if you stop and look at it developmentally and physically in terms of puberty and strength and size, I think one could argue that an 8th grader who is 13 or 14 years old playing against a 12th grader who is 15 or 16 years old is drastically different. You really can't, you're pulling up 8th graders to play with 10th graders versus 6th graders to playing up with 7th and 8th graders. Developmentally, it's way different when you're comparing the 8th graders to the 10th graders. In addition, I don't know if too many people know this, David didn't know this, but VSHL is now allowing 11th and 12th graders to play JV sports. You have to shake your head and say, well, why are they doing that? They're probably doing that because they don't have the numbers. So 11th and 12th graders now are allowed to play JV sports under the condition that the opposing team is notified. So given that, I don't see the safety concern. And then, of course, we've got some hard stops in place. We've got a physician who has to sign off on the students. We have the parents have to consent. And then we have the coaches have to make the decision. This isn't just, let's have all 6th graders play sports. This is, let's give 6th graders the opportunity to earn their spot. And if they can do it, they should have that every right. So I highly doubt that we're going to have a tsunami of 6th graders. You know, you talk about facilities. We have got coaches who can control that. I think it creates a great opportunity for allowing a student to see what it feels like to try out. Theoretically, good coaches aren't going to discourage kids from coming out the next year. You're going to have a lot of kids that are going to try out at once. Maybe you have 10, 15 kids in a 6th grade class that are trying out for 2 spots. Well, guess what? They're not going to be alone if they don't make the team. And if anything, it's going to motivate them to work harder and to come back and be stronger and better and have something to work towards. And again, undoubtedly, they're not going to be alone. So I think competition is a good thing. I hope people wouldn't argue with me on that. I think we need more competition. We don't need less competition. And good coaches want more athletes to choose from, not fewer. Good coaches know that early development is important, and it's important to have early development to grow team success and team programming. This group, the RVMSL, which is the Roanoke Valley Middle School League, that comprises 8 schools. So 5 out of those 8 schools are RCPS schools. And I did actually reach out to some of the other schools, and I asked them, I said, look, if we went ahead and did this and we allowed 6th graders to play, would you choose not to play us? And one of the gentlemen I talked to today said, no, actually, we would still play you. Our concern is that you wouldn't want to play us. Because if we have 6th graders, maybe we don't want our 6th graders to get beat. And I said, well, I don't think that's going to be the case. And again, we're the majority of that organization, or 5 out of 8 of those schools. So I don't think we're going to have an issue with that. And good coaches will want to play, and they understand that teams learn more from losing, than winning. So who are the stakeholders in this decision? The stakeholders are the coaches, actually, and I didn't see, I don't know if you reached out to the coaches, Rhonda, but I've talked to a lot of coaches, and I've talked to a lot of parents, and they simply want their kids to have the opportunity and equal access. They are the stakeholders. The principals, they're not coaching our kids. They're not the ones who are staying in after school and putting in the hard work. Let the coaches decide if there's a kid who's developed enough to earn the spot, and then let the parents decide if it's a good fit for their kids. And lastly, I'm just going to say, as a school board, I think we need to make decisions looking at the bigger picture here. We need to take a hard look at the downward trend of the sports participation, and we should not simply turn a blind eye, because that is how we've always done something. We've got neighboring school districts, Roanoke City, Montgomery County, Allegheny, Rockbridge, Lexington County. Those are just a few who allow 6th graders the opportunity to try out and play for sports. Now, our public schools need solid sports programming for all of the myriad of benefits that I listed before and mentioned. But if we don't prepare now for success for the future, we certainly run the risk of our athletes leaving our Roanoke Public County schools. They could get recruited. We already had issues with recruiting, and they could be going off to other schools. And we're going to be the ones who are culpable for not looking ahead and building and developing and optimizing our athletic programming.
Thank you. Mr. Hudson.
I would like to just go down the cons list and kind of give you my opinion, just from, I've coached kids from 9 years old all the way to the varsity level in multiple sports, as I mentioned earlier. And, the first thing, the middle school concept, and there needs to be an easy transition. I understand that sounds great on paper, but I've got kids on a rec league right now that are 9 and 10 years old playing travel ball, and they're gone all weekend long. And I know there's parents in here that see it, know it, and these kids that are playing all year and training all year, their level of ability is just insane compared to kids who don't do that. And, moving on to the cutting of 7th and 8th graders to make room, we're not making room. If a 6th grader can beat you for that spot, then a 6th grader deserves to be there. That's the way I look at it. If a baseball player, if a kid's in 6th grade and he can throw 60 miles an hour and be accurate, then, to me, he's got a spot on the pitching mound. Just to me as a 7th grader and 8th grader, I know, yeah, that looks bad. I got beat by a 6th grader, but, you take that for what it's worth and you work hard and you come back next year and you earn your spot. That's happened to some of the most famous athletes in the world. Michael Jordan was cut from a school team. But look what he turned out to be. The cost of more uniforms, coaches, transportation, I don't really see where that really comes to play, because we set limits on the team number, just like we do now. If we have, you're not going to have 25 people come play for the baseball team, or wrestling, you're going by weight class. And, when I was in middle school, I had to cut people because we only have 12 or 14 uniforms, whatever school you have. So I don't really see where that's a huge concern. Safety concerns in contact sports. Well, I would hope to think that, a football coach wouldn't put a kid who's a lot smaller in a position that it's going to not be good. Different people's sizes, different positions. So I'm not too concerned about that either. A parent is allowing their child to play the sport. The coach is able to evaluate the kid while they're practicing. Doctors are signing off on them to be able to play sports. And, to be honest, if you walk around the middle school, there's kids in 6th grade that are just as big as I am nowadays. So I don't think that we're going to get the 65-pound kid in 6th grade, on the football team. It's just probably not going to happen. I think that's kind of a common sense thing. More kids will get cut from the team. Like Cheryl said earlier, I don't see a barrage of 6th graders coming out and beating 7th and 8th graders. I don't think we're going to have 50% of a team having 6th graders on. It's just not going to happen. But I think you will see, I don't know a number, but maybe 2 or 3 kids that are exceptionally gifted and talented that have been working hard for a very long time, playing travel and training in these different facilities we have around the valley that may just very well be able to make the team. And I think giving them that opportunity is a great thing because, and Cheryl, you and I talked earlier about this, a lot of times parents don't have the funds or the ability, or maybe it's a transportation issue, where if they're playing school ball, well, it's right after school. They can go get that practice in, they can play. And even for a developmental standpoint, that middle school coach is going to be able to instill what he's looking for in 7th and 8th grade, whether it be, football, whatever plays they like to run, the kid's going to get that in his head before he gets, to 7th and 8th. It makes a huge difference as you age, and it'll help the JV as well. Filling schedules in the league, I don't know where that comes from. Do you have any explanation on that one?
I think it's just because they almost have a full schedule now with the league, so they've
Right.
got to work a little harder to go out and find teams. If we drop these 3, then they're going to have to now find
Well,
potentially 5 more schools. But
I guess why
3
would
schools.
I guess my question though would
no,
be
because they don't have a full schedule now.
But my question would be why would we if those 3 don't want their 6th graders to play, then we're okay with that. I don't have an issue with that.
They didn't tell me that they wouldn't want them to play. They did say that they would prefer that 6th grader. Their vote was no. They did not want 6th graders to play.
I guess I can't see a negative point to our teams utilizing 6th graders. Yeah, I don't see why they would have a problem with that.
They didn't have a problem. The 2 that I talked to said, we'll still play you. We're just concerned you won't play us.
Right, and I think
And I can
that's
tell
Who
you,
was it you
good,
spoke with?
Chuck Pound, the other one. Yeah. So,
and I understand the principals. I mean, they're looking at it from a different, perspective. Their job's not to coach kids. Their jobs are not out here watching these athletes. But I can tell you, times have changed, like Cheryl said, with all the different leagues. And I mean, these kids are playing year round. They're playing year round, whether it be basketball, baseball. There's year-round training and playing, and I just don't see how that's going to impact the education of a child going from 5th to 6th when they're already doing it. And I think it's a big deal, and it's something to be proud of to play on your school's team.
That's right.
And when I was in school, it was a big deal to make the team. That was a huge thing. So.
and the seasons are actually shorter. I didn't realize that.
Yes.
So the middle school seasons are considerably shorter
Yes.
because they don't have the postseason stuff.
Right.
So it's really not a huge time
No.
in terms of practices. I mean, in high school, you might go to practice, you'll have a 2-hour practice, plus you'll have to watch the JV, watch the varsity game, the varsity watch the JV game. I mean, it's a 5-hour ordeal. This isn't like this. This is just middle school.
No, and I mean, the games are earlier than what JV and
Sometimes
varsity
they're right
play.
after
And
school.
so it's not like you're out at 9 o'clock at night playing. I mean, anyways, that's a coach's perspective, somebody that's been there. And I've been on teams where JV does pull all your 8th graders, and it makes a huge difference. And if there's a couple kids on the 6th grade level that have that talent and ability, genetically gifted and been training, then I'm all for it. I don't see a downside to any of this.
Mr. Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I was trying to listen to all this too and put, things, and I coached for about 15 years as well, baseball and basketball, and, I'm trying to see the parents' input. I think that's very important because, and how many 6th graders are actually playing on these teams? They don't make up 50% of it, I know, right? I mean, I don't see it.
It'd
Are you
probably
talking
be
about
1 or 2.
currently?
Probably be 1 or 2, maybe.
Like you're
Yeah.
talking about when we met, I would say one or, you're going to have one,
That's
two.
what I'm trying to figure out. This is not an influx to change the whole
No.
scope of our sports teams. And then I was looking at cost. Well, don't we have the cost now of all the transportation and everything and the uniforms? and
So we're not
everything?
increasing numbers of
I
athletes.
don't see that being an issue.
In fact, Mike, one could argue that taking our 8th graders and moving our 8th graders who have to now travel the time cost to another school, get on a bus, the activities bus or whatever, that costs money to run those buses. If we could build enough programming and we can actually get it to the point and build up our programs better, which are depleted now, and have it be that we don't have to call up 12 8th graders to play on a team. Just think about all the time and the financial costs that will have, because your 8th graders could actually just stay where they're supposed to be playing, because you'll have a good, solid JV team that can support the JV team. Right now, the only reason why those 8th graders are getting called up, unlike 10 years ago, 10 years ago, we didn't have 8th grade. If you were an 8th grader and you got called up to play on the boys' baseball team, you were darn good. Now, they're pulling everybody up because they just don't have the numbers. So it would actually save money, because you wouldn't have to take those kids and move them on a bus to the high school.
Well, I think just a kid sitting for a year, not having the opportunity when he's really good is a bad thing. So if you've got a 6th grader that's really good at whatever sport he enjoys, it's almost a disservice to, well, you can't play until next year. Especially when you're in a situation like you're talking about, where the situation I was in when I was coaching middle school is JV took everybody.
And
I
they're
would have loved
leaving.
to have-
If those 6th graders are saying, "Now the heck with sports."
And I'm coaching the rec team right now, just assistant coach for 9 and 10-year-olds. And I've got a kid on the team that is just unbelievable. And I know that when he gets to 6th grade, he will be better. If he continues the way he's going, he will be better than most of the 7th and 8th graders that I had at the time, just because he's just naturally talented. And it would be a disservice to let a kid like that not have the opportunity to play for his school.
And the other
Mr.
thing
Ray?
about maturity, I was trying to figure out, all kids are not the same.
Right.
Some kids mature quicker than others. And we know that. It's just natural. And I can't see one that might not have that maturity being able to go and produce that maturity enough to get on the team, maybe. If they don't have it, then it may not even be an issue. But that was what was, I couldn't figure out that
I think some of these concerns, the financial, and then that one, I think what they're referring to is currently, if you try out for our football teams, you're on the team. So they're going to max out as much as they can. Wrestling, track, same way. They're going to try to accommodate as many kids as they can. So I think what they're saying that under our current structure, but we can always change our current structure, right?
Right.
So we can always set a limit on how many we're going to carry on each team to make sure we have the uniforms and the coach supervision and the bus. We can do that. But currently, that's not what they're doing. So they're thinking if we practice under the same structure we're under right now, that it could increase costs and it could cause some problems with that if we carry them all. If we try to carry as
Well-
many as we can.
So I find that confusing, because I know tennis, we can only take so many. Football, you typically only have so many pads, you only have so many helmets. You only take so many.
That's typically how it is.
Currently, that's probably football.
I mean, you
currently.
might have-
Football and track.
You might have plus or minus, you could add a couple extra and just let them know. You might,
I remember coaching baseball. It's like you start counting the uniforms. Okay, I've got 14 uniforms. Well, that's all I've got. Or if you look at the wrestling singlets, if you've got 12, you've got 12 positions. So
And I've seen them alternate. These 5 kids, you're going to wear uniform day 1, day 2, day 3. They alternate uniforms. So I think there is a struggle with having enough uniforms that we would need to accommodate. But
or you
that's
don't
something-
accommodate.
or that's something the team can work on with the fundraisers.
That's right.
Right.
To get the coach can do that.
Or they have maybe they have a travel squad. For home games, pick as many can dress. But if it's a limitation on buses, maybe you have those that travel and
Well,
not everybody gets to travel.
And I agree with Mike. It's not like we're going to have an influx of 50 6th graders in one school making teams. I just don't see that happening. It's just going to be your standout 6th graders that are playing at an elite level for their age.
Mike, did you have anything else?
No, I like what you were saying though, David, about, what the process of having a team, maybe travel, that, it could be an aspect there. That's a possibility. So, but giving them the opportunity that they wouldn't normally have.
Yeah. When I look at this, and I've been involved with rec sports for a long time as well, and that year off I don't think is helpful. I think when this league was put together 15 or 20 years ago, the numbers were completely different. I mean, right now, rec club basketball, they didn't have anything over 12 this past year. It just, Roanoke County did not offer rec basketball above 12. And it used to be they had up to 18 just a few years ago, because my oldest son, who was 22, was playing up until the time he was 18. But they didn't have it. So I think the rules, some of these rules that they may have developed when that league was put together, it was different back then. There were a lot more kids playing sports, and the numbers, as Cheryl said, they're down. I don't see any real good reason to prohibit sixth graders from playing. I mean, some will get cut, and hopefully they realize that they come back next year when those eighth graders have moved on to the high school and try out again if they get cut in sixth grade. But that's part of it, I guess.
I think that's what Mr. Hudson said, not to interrupt you, but what he said about I'm gonna go back and work harder. That gives me the incentive to go back and work harder. I'm gonna make it next year.
Right.
I'm gonna show them, so, you know.
Yeah, and we at Northside, I mean, we didn't have a JV softball team this year, and part of that may have been, it all starts with the rec club and people being involved in rec club sports and then moving on, because it's tough to pick up those sports 7th, 8th, 9th grade. So if we let them play in 6th grade, I think it's a plus, personally.
Well, I know that was a lot of words that I put out there, but I had a lot of thoughts.
You almost got Mike Ray-like today.
I know. I think it's important to
She's
listen to
teasing.
lastly, I just think it's important to listen to our coaches.
She puts
And every
me in
single
front of
coach that
this
I've
talk.
talked to has said, yes, absolutely. This is a need, I'm seeing it, and,
I think we need to look at that policy. Is that part of, is that part of policy?
I think it is in there somewhere.
It is.
You-
It's a
you said it.
policy.
It's that we will
Yeah.
follow it.
I don't
but-
know the number, but it is a
We've got
policy.
a policy, I was trying to look it up, 7.06, which is rules for middle school, and I can't find it there, but I know I've seen it in a different policy. We just need to
No,
find it.
there is they have a handbook. This is their middle school handbook. And it's just one that we have created and handed out. It's a constitution between the organization. So this is what's currently in place, but it's just basically all the rules and regulations about modifications and by sport, how many teams. And so that is their constitution, but we control the constitution, right? So.
Is this something we would have to take to a meeting to vote upon?
Only if it's in policy, I think.
This is not in policy.
Right.
Okay, so we could just,
What you're referring to refers to that our middle school sports will follow, it's our Roanoke County that little
It
thing
isn't-
we hand out every year,
it is essentially a policy because it's saying refer to
refer to
this.
that, yes.
So we would need to,
Yes. But we
Adjust
do
that.
control this constitution.
you know, and I would just say, if you don't mind, that if it doesn't work, you have to be able to pivot. If we didn't learn anything from COVID, we should have learned this. We have to adapt. We can't say that's how it always was. And it wasn't always was, because this was only 15 years ago that this was put into place. Must have been important then, but it's not now. And maybe things are going to change. Maybe we'll have an influx of students. Maybe people will start having more babies again. I don't know. But demographically, our society is changing, and we are not living in 1995 anymore. As much as I love 1995.
Mr. Ray?
Well, just that last point, but, you know, let the parents decide if this is a fit, if this is what they want to do. Let them decide instead of we saying, no, they can't. And this gives them the opportunity, if they approve, they're going to say, my child, I feel, is capable of doing this.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, I'd like to add to that, I think we lose the bigger picture at times when it's supposed to be about putting our students first. And we have to continue to think about putting our students first and serving their needs.
Good.
Anything else? Okay. Item 2.04.
So just to follow up that item, I think what we probably need to do is look at the policies and so forth and see if that's something that needs to come back for action, and we'll bring it back, you know, if
Okay.
it looks like it
If
does.
it needs to be an action item,
Right.
let us know. Athletic trainer EpiPen
Oh.
discussion. You thought
I
you were
had that one.
done.
I
I
thought I
know you
was
were
done.
trying to get out of town.
You're
Oh my
closing
gosh.
shop.
Oh, I forgot,
I
that's
totally
right.
forgot about
You're
that
not
one.
quite done.
Are you going on vacation?
I
She's
am,
trying to-
Oh, no.
I am. You see, I'm very excited about
I
it.
didn't mean that. I didn't mean that.
Oh, great, you got it.
We
Okay,
expect
here we
you to
go.
send
Thanks,
us a
Chuck.
selfie of-
Chuck
of-
always saves me.
Of your country music.
All right, so EpiPens for high school athletic trainers. So basically, we have a policy currently in place that's 7.13, administering medication to students, where we allow students to carry and self-administer those. We're talking mainly secondary students here, since we're talking trainers that are at our high schools. So students can already carry those and do, and there is the expectation that they carry those at all times, and they also carry them at all their athletic events. It is to be noted that when they go on field trips or they go to away ball games, our trainers do not travel. So we would continue to have the expectation they would keep those with them at all times. Currently, we have all of our school nurses in our buildings have access to EpiPens. And then we have our trainers, we have 4 of our athletic trainers that are contracted by Carillion. When we first went into contract with Carillion, Carillion donated a EpiPen kit to every one of those 4 contracted trainers, and they had those in place and those expired. So the understanding, which is beyond the knowledge of the people who are currently in position here, that was Roanoke County's responsibility to replace those. That is not in the contract that we have. That was just a donation. The expectation was we would replace those. We were not aware of that, and so they were not replaced. So that was brought to our attention that the trainers no longer had those EpiPens. We have 1 trainer who is contracted by Roanoke County Public Schools. However, that trainer is overseen by a Carillion doctor, the same Carillion doctors as our other 4 trainers. What that means is if we were to allow our 5 trainers to have EpiPens, a doctor has to sign a script for that, and Carillion has already agreed that their doctor will stand in place of that. So they would be responsible for signing that script and allowing our trainers to have those EpiPens. We would have to purchase those EpiPens. Those EpiPens, what we would need is 1 kit for children and 1 kit for adults. They're approximately 300 apiece, and that would be about 600 per trainer per 15 to 18 months is how long they last. There are some ways out there to try to get these more at a discount rate. However, we've run into some problems because we're asking for these under a organization name and not an individual name, and some of the discounts don't apply to us because we're asking for an organization. So we've struggled a little bit trying to find a price under that. Fire and Rescue has a resource. They're going to reach out and see if they can get them a little bit cheaper for us. But currently our price that we have found is $300 per kit. So that would be $600 per trainer. And so we met with the SHAB, the School Health Advisory Board, and we discussed this topic, and we had that committee's made up of Fire and Rescue. We have 2 doctors that sit on that committee, and then school personnel. And so we had this discussion, and everybody was in agreement that we do need, if that's something that the board's interested in, we recommend that we do have those EpiPens on hand. However, we would want to make sure that Carillion doctor signs the script for all 5, and they have agreed to do that. And we would also like to have written protocols in place for the trainers that would basically establish proper storage, because they have to be maintained at room temperature. So we have to be very careful about outdoor extreme heat, extreme cold. So we would have to make sure there's protocols in place for them to maintain that. They did not think that was a big deal. We have to manage the expiration dates, so we would make that responsibility of the trainer, just like they do AED, when we check the dates on those. So they would be responsible for those dates. And then when theirs expire, they would have to place a reorder with Charlene Vale, who would be the person who would order those. The nurses currently do all of that for us, so this would, if the trainers are going to maintain the EpiPens, they would be responsible for that protocol. So we're happy to put that protocol in place, and we could place the orders for those if you give us the go-ahead to do that.
Can I ask you one question about the scripts? Because I think you saw my email, because I had reached out to Walgreens, who you know is your niece. Small world, David. Anyway, so GoodRx, you're not allowed to use the GoodRx?
When,
That's shocking to me.
I know, Charlene did call in forgot Russ's last name. Delaney. He said the same thing, that he felt the same way, that GoodRx cannot go to an organization. It can only go to an individual.
So why don't we have the trainers the scripts written out to the trainers. Because you
That would be a
could,
Carillion decision.
I think we need to ask the Carillion doctor. I can't imagine that, I know him personally, would not allow that.
Right.
Just because they're the ones who are administering it typically. Like Narcan is something that a lot of these trainers and a lot of people who are just in the health field are carrying that around, and they have the script written out in their name so that if something happens, that they have the tool that's needed to perform an emergency procedure.
Now, one thing about this cost, and you may already know this, but the 2-packs are $300. There's 2 in that 2-pack, right? So this committee definitely recommends you got to have a backup for every one of them. They do not recommend that you have one, so you have to have 2 of each one on hand at all times. So when you price it out, sometimes it's 1 instead of 2, but we have to have 2.
You really want to, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
In terms of the expiration dates,
Yeah.
if you get a good pharmacist, they will make sure that you get a fresh box. So those EPIs should not last 15 to 18 months. And I only know this because I have experience with EPI and children with food allergies. You have to get the freshest box, and they'll do that for you. You just call and say, I need the one that just came off the line. Don't give me one that's been sitting on the shelf for 6 months. So we can prolong the life of the
Okay.
use of that EPI.
Yeah.
What was the good RX price?
$113 for a 2-pack.
Same thing.
Same thing. We need to look into that and let me know if you run into an obstacle.
Okay.
I'm sure I can help out.
Charlene Vale called her pharmacist that she gets for our organization, and they told her no.
Yeah.
So we've hit the dead
It needs to
end,
be
but-
written out to the
But if the
trainers.
doctor's willing to do it, then that would be a
It
workaround.
clearly
Yeah.
needs to write that out to those trainers. Those trainers are their employees.
And they're their employees. They should say, yeah,
There's
we'll
just no
let-
excuse for that.
We'll do that.
I will tell you though, with our nurses, it's under our organization name, not our nurse's name. And our nurses, according to Charlene, would push back by having their names on the scripts, on the
But
script.
it's not a nurse, it's the athletic trainer.
Right. But currently, the ones our nurses carry are under the organization name.
Yeah, but these we're not giving to the nurses, we're giving to the athletic trainers.
Right,
So
but-
I think it should be different.
Regardless, I think we spend the
Yeah.
money, whether it's
Exactly.
$113 or whether it's $500. I mean, I
Yeah.
think we need to spend the money. So-
$300, whatever it would be.
Yeah.
We need to have it.
And I just want to give a,
Yeah.
I just want to give a shout out to Maddie, my trainer at Hidden Valley High School, because if it wasn't for Maddie, who was diligent enough to look through her kit and saw that those EPIs were expired, and then she brought it to someone's attention, and she just didn't feel like she got the answers that she needed. And she reached out to me and she's like, listen, this isn't acceptable. You know, I've been hired as a trainer. I need to have the tools to perform certain tasks. And why am I even being hired if I don't have the necessary tools? And I told her I would, get on it and do some investigating, and, of course, here we are. But it was shocking to me, and I have to tell you, I think it was a huge oversight. And I'm glad that we're resolving it. But it was completely unacceptable that throughout this entire year, our trainers did not have EPI. I know that Roanoke City, I heard, only used EPI once in the past 5 years. But I'm sure you could ask that parent who
Yeah.
needed
You
that
don't take
EPI
that
What's the
once
value of that
in
one?
their 5 years, and they would say, thank you very much.
Money is not an issue.
Money's not an issue.
All right.
See, moving forward on that one, you going,
Yeah.
have a nice vacation.
Well, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Stegall.
Thank
I
you.
just circle back real quick. There is a policy, 6.44, that specifies about the athletics being for 7th. So we will have to bring that back to you for policy
Yeah,
change.
Okay.
I thought so.
Okay.
That's fine. You bringing it to us at the next week?
I think we could.
Okay.
Happy vacation.
Oh, thank you.
See ya.
Enjoy. Don't end up on the stage anywhere.
Item 2.05, request to surplus assorted items. Mr. Harley Grimes, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, school board members, Dr. Nicely. Staff has a request to surplus assorted items, and there are different departments that have items to be surplused. And this would go for the consent agenda for the June 23rd school board meeting. What we have on the list is from nutrition. We have one Garland oven, one, and I'm going to try to pronounce this, Blagette oven. Warehouse has 15 old vacuums with old vacuum parts, an old propane buffer. Music has an old piano, CTE has 2 3D printers, an old lab equipment, 5 woodworking pieces. Maintenance has 2 zero-turn mowers and a blower. From the schools, we have old weeded library books, which are books that they've gone through and that the librarians have identified as either out of date or no longer needed. Also, there's a rowing machine. And for the nurses, we have 4 of the cardiac science AEDs.
And 5,
And, I'm sorry, and 5 tympanometers. I hope that's close.
That's what it's called. Mhm.
So these we would like to request to be surplus and could be part of the consent agenda if the board approves.
I don't know. What are you doing with those 5 meters? Huh?
That
Hearing.
is-
Hearing screening.
What is it?
Hearing screening.
Yes.
Oh,
That brings me back to my
should've known
days.
oh, yeah.
I use those, but
I never could say it, but I remember now.
you put it.
Yeah.
So must I say, or ask, did I pronounce it correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good.
Is there a market?
Not sure. We do know that from the department, they were requesting quite a sizable amount for each one of those 5 meters. But they do require repairs, and that the repairs are quite costly. So, and there's some age to the equipment as well. So again, we may be looking at, I don't want to say pennies on the dollar, but something close to that.
I guess anything that we sell, there's no liability afterwards,
Correct. It's sold as is.
as is.
I don't know, why would we have had tympanometers? Did you have speech
Did the
pathologists using them?
nurses?
To see if they had,
It's-
We do hearing
for ear,
screening,
for hearing,
hearing
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
or,
But you don't have the audiological boxes, do you? You do have, okay.
all right. Thank you, Mr. Grimes.
You're welcome.
As, yeah,
While Mr. Grimes is here, he's not giving a report on this, but you may have seen out back, this is good news. I don't know, there's at least 4, if not 5 of the mobile units. It's parked back here, they've been moved off site of the elementary schools, and the company Aries, we've got, promises July 15th, set up and delivery, so that moved forward, so.
Nice.
So we are definitely in the process of cleanup after removing those structures.
Have we gotten any time frame on the delivery of the playground equipment that we authorized?
Well, I'm glad you asked. We have meetings that we're trying to establish next week for each of the principals to go over not only the budgeted items as well as the concept. I was hoping to have all of the information so that we could possibly present it today, but it looks like it's going to be probably the next work session, which is in August, so that I can bring that to the board so that they can see, so you can see the concepts as well as what we've identified as far in the budget.
Okay, so they're working on the concept. They get to look at, kind of pick out the concepts for each school. Is that how that's working?
We started out with the concept that Glenver Elementary has identified, and we already have in contract. But it's something that gives us enough flexibility so that it can change with the locations that we've identified on this first 7. I'm calling phase 1. And what we're receiving from Carolina Rec is a color rendition of what that playground would look like.
Okay. Yeah, I know each school has different needs
Yep.
with some of their special education programs and stuff. So
Correct.
my hope was that each school would be able to modify or pick out something that would adapt to the population of the school.
Correct, and that's what we're doing.
Okay.
As well as providing the school colors as part of the play
Great.
equipment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Oh, wait a minute. One more question for you while you're
Sure.
here. Sports fields. Was the dirt ever delivered at Glenver Elementary for the Glenver Middle School softball field? Do you know if that's come
I
through?
can't answer that because I've not been a part of the latest conversations.
Okay. I'll get with
It
Chris
was not
later.
as of end of last week, I know, so.
Okay.
and David, I have a question. So, do we have an update, would you have an update or somebody have an update on the flooring at Hidden Valley High School, the gym floor?
There was an email that came out.
Because we're having
Just a few
issues with
days
that
ago.
contractor.
No issues with the contractor. I know that Mr. Kegels, who's going to be taking over July 1st, has been involved in trying to communicate with, Josh Willow about that, so, I don't remember details, but I know the communication's happening. They're aware of the volleyball, season starting and.
Kids going
I
back
think,
to school.
What was seemed like there was one thing they had to work out, but I don't think there was any major hiccups to it.
Okay.
I'll see if we can get some
I
information.
just heard through
emailed out.
it was going to be delayed.
I know
and-
Mr. Whitlow expressed some concerns about
Yeah.
this, getting some
Correct.
information and so forth, so I know Mr. Kegels has been trying to help with some of that, so.
Okay. And the last question I have is about Oak Grove Elementary School, in terms of safety. There was some fencing that I thought at some point was going to be put around the back of the school. We were talking about safety and everything else. It looks to me like this has been a topic for quite a while, but just hasn't happened. And I wanted to know if anybody had an update on that.
I was on the playground at Oak Grove
Mm-hmm.
with the principal, and the topic of the fencing was brought up.
Okay.
And as far as the status of additional fencing for that play area, I'm not aware of any movement at this point.
Okay.
Although that is something that I looked at while I was on the playground to see how much fencing are we talking about? And also, the asphalt play area where the basketball goals are right next to the parking area. So there was some concern there that if we do fencing for the main play area, we also need to address that basketball play area because the ball is going out into the parking lot during the day while they're on the playground.
That's
So-
safety issues.
Correct.
Yeah, so my understanding was that the police reports that I don't know, Brent, you might know more about this obviously than I do, but do officers go out and assess our schools for safety and
Yes, and
fencing?
that's been a topic in the past, is having fences around playgrounds. I mean, that's been a topic for probably 10 years. I mean, it's,
So what happens every year is the state requires a safety audit to be done at each school, and so law enforcement's involved with that, along with the school personnel and so forth, and any safety issues are recommended and so forth, and that's what that process is like.
Okay, well,
they give a report for each school.
okay, and do you have access to the report? Because I've heard that this has been an
Well, I-
ongoing reported issue, but
They
it hasn't
pres-
been addressed.
Present that report.
Who has that report?
Well,
They're delivered back to Dr. Stegall, so
Oh,
we can go
okay.
back and check to see what documentation is regarding that fence or the deed and so forth. I don't know the specifics about it.
I guess my concern is Oak Grove is right on the highway, and there's another parking lot that's adjacent to it where they have had issues with vagrants coming up. It may be one
Camping
point
out.
they had a parent who was was being restrained, a restraining order, and was talking to the kid through the playground, and his parents were concerned. So little things like that, and I think given all the heightened security, it's never such a bad
well,
idea.
I didn't want my comment of the 10-year thing to look bad upon them, because they have done a lot. Every year they take these,
These things,
and they,
yeah.
as money
Yeah.
comes, they fix
do
them.
it,
So
okay.
that comment wasn't being sarcastic. It's just, that's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
And we know that there's certain schools that have
Certain
needs
schools that
fencing
have
and
those
different
issues,
issues. But
okay.
yeah, they've done a great job. I mean, in my experience over the years, you guys have done a great job at if you notice the numbers over the doors, there's a reason for those numbers over the
Right,
doors.
okay.
Just small things like that they have addressed, and obviously the lobbies now where you can't just walk right into the office when you
Right.
come in. There's been a lot. They've changed doors because,
lot.
like some of our schools, I remember Glenville Elementary just had a little old wood door from probably whenever the school was built.
Push it up.
Right. So there's been a lot of changes over the years. So that comment was not meant to be derogatory at all. It's just,
Yeah, okay.
there's a list we've been doing.
No,
for-
and I can appreciate that too, because Mike, I remember in our days walking through Case Spring Elementary and bringing that to the attention, saying, hold on a second, anybody can walk in.
right.
So I'm just asking, again, I'm new here. There's a couple of people who have asked me about it, so at some point, if we.
Some of these things,
Yeah.
when it comes to fencing, just by comparison, I think some of these things are sometimes, what's perceived to
Mm-hmm.
be, safety issues versus not. So I think in this one, I think it probably needs to be revisited to see if conditions change, what is that? Let's look at it. I just by way of another example, I know sometimes, I'm just very familiar with the school there, Bonsack, in terms of where their track is behind the school and so forth. And I know at one point somebody said it would be nice to have a fence, But honestly, from like a neighborhood perspective, in terms of who uses that in the evening, that'd be like a really bad idea. There's really not a safety issue there. But at Oak Grove, you're right, next to the highway, I think it is something that needs to be looked at again and kind of maybe brought back in terms of any sort of
Well,
recommendations.
my principal has brought it up to me, so when my
Sure.
principal brings something up and it's her concern, it's obviously my
Absolutely.
concern.
And especially there at Oak Grove where the walking track has been installed around the ball field, that does provide a more attractive place for people to congregate.
And just as info, they were at Cave Spring today, the officers doing a safety audit. So, I mean, they're going around now. But then Oak Grove, and then you've got the smaller playground area too. It's right next to the building.
So do we get access to those reports, Mike, or does it just go straight to Rhonda? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's internal, but I'm happy to.
If you wanted to see it, I
look
could,
at
yeah, I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, the
We don't
only
put it
thing,
out for public consumption, but if you want to come in and look at it.
For obvious
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah.
and I think Mr. Hudson can attest to things that they know we don't know, and we don't need to know certain things, what they do.
Yeah, it's definitely not, you don't want to give everything out to the public, just like
No,
the maps we
there
were
you go.
talking about earlier.
There you go.
So, yeah.
All right, well, thank you.
All right. Item 2.06, Employee Climate Survey. Dr. McClung. Thanks, Harlan.
Good evening. I just wanted to touch base and give you all just an initial update about our school climate survey this year. We've done climate surveys in the past, for about the past 4 or 5 years with our PBIS program, but we do those at the individual schools. And I know that there's been so much going on with COVID and stress and factors like that, that Dr. Nicely did allow me to look at that on a division-wide perspective, just so we could see if there are any big themes that are impacting our teachers. So in May, we actually sent out a survey for 2 weeks that would allow any of our staff members to participate and add their feedback. So what was interesting about the way we did the survey, we had some demographic questions that we asked, some typical yes, no's, or, on a scale of 1 to 5, or do you strongly agree or disagree? But this survey was different in the fact that we asked one primary open-ended question to staff. And what we asked was, what do you think we're doing well, and what can we do to improve our climate and culture? And the reason we did that is because we did not want to give any preconceived notions of how people are feeling right now, because we've been through so much in the past few years. This also allowed staff to submit one response, multiple responses, and during the conclusion of the survey, staff could see what other folks were saying as well, and that helped with transparency. So once we finalized, I believe it was around May 20th, we ended up having 882 employees who participated in the survey. The people that were surveyed were people assigned to and working in our school buildings only. So nutrition staff would have had access to that survey, but not our bus drivers, not our central office staff. We only wanted to know, we really wanted to get a feel for what was going on in the schools. So each school, all 27 of our schools did respond. Some of our smaller schools, the least amount of responses from a school were 14, and then at some of our larger schools up to 51. So we were well represented by all of our schools. So with that, I'm going to go over some of the demographic information first. With that, we wanted to know how long people have worked in Roanoke County schools. And so what we found out is half of our survey respondents have been here 10 plus years. And I think that speaks for our division, because one of the highlights of the retirement banquet every year for me is seeing the amount of folks who have spent years and years in our division. They're loyal, they're proud of our school, and so that indeed was true also in this survey. The next question we asked was, are you satisfied with your job? And so with that, 74% of the respondents were either they agreed or strongly agreed that they were satisfied. 14 were neutral, and then we had about 12 who disagreed. So I felt like that was good, but we always want to do things even better, and we want all of our employees satisfied, because when we have employees who feel comfortable and content in their jobs, they do a better job for our kids. The next question we asked was, tell us about the professional development opportunities that we have available to you. Are they meeting your needs? And so that's a pretty big question because we do a lot of conferences. We do our own PD. We have PLCs. We have a lot of different activities that we do for our staff. One of the pieces that was kind of a scattered response. One of the pieces that I was able to take away from the survey is staff really want to have more choice and autonomy in the types of professional development they participate in. One of the other pieces that I gleaned from the entire survey is just communication. We've got to communicate why we're doing what we're doing. For instance, some of our grants have required training that we have to do every year. I know there's some required training with special education, with technology, among others. And so one of the things that we're going to take away from this is to communicate what's required by the state so they understand why we're doing what we're doing. So there wasn't a huge surprise in that data, but it did give us some insight on how to make some improvements. This question was just about the school. In my school, I am treated and respected as an educational professional, and I loved this because you can see that only 1% said never. So that was overwhelmingly, people do feel that they are respected as a professional in their school. So that was an impressive amount. Another question was, I feel supported by other adults in my school. And so, again, we had an 88% of responses that say they agree with that or strongly agree with that, versus only 4% that disagreed or strongly disagreed. So I think one of the things I feel is that our schools are they're like families. We spend a lot of time in our schools, and there are some close connections with staff in our buildings. And so that is, that's something that I'm very proud of. Yes, sir.
On the previous slide, not this, that one. Did that break it down by schools?
No. One of the pieces that we did with this survey, anyone who answered, it could be from all 27 schools. So we did countywide. We're not able to identify this one came from Oak Grove or this one came from William Byrd. We wanted people to be very open and forthcoming with their information. So I have no way to trace back who submitted what responses.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sometimes it is good to know that because
It
it could
would be good to know that.
Now, I thought next year, once I'm hoping we can move away from some of the stress we've had through the pandemic. Next year, what we might want to do is ask our principals, would you prefer to give these individually in your school? So we can narrow that down a little bit more. This is the first year we've done a division-wide, but that might be a good idea for next year. One of the other pieces we wanted to know was, how can we appreciate our staff more? We want our staff to know how proud we are and what a good job they're doing in the buildings with our kids, and an amazing job they did through the past couple years. So we actually based this question, it was from a book called The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And although my font's very small, I'm going to look up here, because what we found was most staff, about a third of the staff, just want words of affirmation. You're doing a great job. I really appreciated it when you did this. We've got to remember to do that. Sometimes we're so busy and we're so stressed. A third of our staff really just want words of appreciation from anyone who works with them. Another is acts of service. That was 28%, so almost 30 again. And that's just small gestures that you're willing to help somebody. You know, if Dr. Nicely's, if I see him drop a bunch of things in the hall and I say, Dr. Nicely, let me help you with that, or how can I help you, or let me give you some time, you're carrying some stuff down the hall. Just very simple things that make people feel appreciated, and we want that for our staff. And the other piece that was one of the stronger pieces in this piece was tangible gifts. That does not mean we go out and buy everybody gift cards, or although that would be wonderful, but it just means little things. Just little things. It could be little Hershey Kiss or a little chocolate bar in your box. People appreciate being appreciated. And so what we want are people who are happy in our division, people who want to stay. So we got some good information from that we can take back as well. This was interesting. We asked, are adequate mental health resources available to staff? A lot of what we do, With our school counseling program, it's all geared towards students. So we want to make sure we take care of our staff just like we do our kids. 62% said, yes, we've got that, but 38% felt like we don't have enough adequate mental health resources. Now, those numbers are exactly the same when do you know how to access mental health services in our school? So 62% said yes, but 38% said no. So one of the pieces that Dr. Hughes and her department are going to do is make sure we have some wellness activities that are optional if staff want to attend. And what I've found is sometimes if I hear a lot of information and I hear about our EAP program or about mindfulness, sometimes that might blow over because I'm not experiencing a problem at that time. But when you need it, you don't realize you need it until you need it. So we're going to try to come up with multiple ways to promote mental health services for our staff as well. I love this one, parallels Dr. Stegall. Do our staff feel safe at work? 51% strongly agree that they do feel safe at school and in our jobs, and only 1% strongly disagreed. So 4% felt negatively. But when you ask a question, everything, you have to really analyze everything you do in a survey, because when I say, do you feel safe? To one person, that might mean emotionally safe. To another person, it might mean physically safe, or, some of the awareness with school shootings that's happened. So we still, every single response, we need to dig a little deeper to try to find out what that means. Now, for our big question, our open-ended question, we had so many responses. What do you think we're doing well, and what do we need to do to improve our climate? So what we did was everything was coded, and we generated themes. And there were a lot of similarities, but this is not going to surprise you, some of the strengths and weaknesses. There was no smoking gun anywhere, but what we're doing well, there are, our staff are proud of some of the pieces that are going on with our school culture and climate in our buildings. We had lots of positive comments about our building level leadership, and even division level leadership. Our staff are very prideful in the jobs that they do. And the responses, they truly care about our kids. Our staff are working hard to do what's best for kids. And our staff want communication, and they appreciate the chance to have a voice in what they're doing. Now, I know this is going to be surprising, but the number one piece that needed to be improved, salaries and compensation. We already know that, but that was overwhelmingly the majority of the survey responses were about pay, and staff being treated like professionals, listening to employees. A lot of concern also popped out around student behavior, especially after COVID. What has happened, you have students who came in to say 8th grade this year, they haven't had a regular school year, they missed, where you learn all of those rules and expectations in 6th grade. So they're coming in, our kids have not been used to the big crowds, like in cafeterias, so we're all trying to get back in order there. So there's definite frustration with some of the behaviors we're seeing because of the come back to school, but that is not anything we didn't anticipate. And I think that's a nationwide trend as well. Our staff feel like a lot of added responsibilities have been placed on them, and they need more time. They need more unencumbered planning time. There are a lot of mandates that come down from the state, a lot of training that's thrown at us every year, and they just want more time to be able to complete their work and their planning and make contact with parents so they can do the best job for our kids. And I loved our staff, what they also said they needed. They needed staff accountability. They said, we want accountability for our students, and we also want accountability for our staff. If there is someone who's not pulling their weight, they want accountability. And just like our students, adults want expectations and limits as well. So I felt like we got a great, we had a great number of responses, and all of it made complete sense, especially considering the environment we've had over the last couple years. So where are we going next? There's a lot to do. We just finished the survey at the end of May, and then we went straight to graduations and straight to some of our administrative training. So we really want to dig in a little bit more. Of course, it's our priority for employee compensation. We want to support our schools with some behavioral supports. We know that that's an issue, and we need to. I fully believe that will die down once we get back in our routine again. We're going to continue to share information and communication with our stakeholders. We're going to break down each bit of this and get feedback from different groups, so people see we're not just asking you for your information, but we want to make a change with that as well. And we're going to refine our plans and communication. A lot just boils down to communication. Sometimes people don't understand why we do what we do, and that's on us to make that clear. One of the pieces, I'll give you an example with PBIS. There were some responsibilities that led me to believe that folks think because we work with PBIS, we don't give consequences for behavior. But indeed, PBIS is setting the expectation. We also have a process for consequences and discipline. So it's going to be down to communication and making sure everything we do is clear for our staff and they have a good understanding. So with that,
Jessica,
yes, ma'am.
we should add the mental health in there too, right, for our teachers and.
Oh, yes, it is. It is. When some of the comments that I saw when we opened up the survey were allowing teachers to be able to use a mental health day as a sick day. And that's something, we had enough responses about that we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about every piece, but it's a really big chunk. So it's going to take us some time to really dig in and try to go through that. But we're going to do it slow and we're going to do it to the best of our ability.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good information there.
Thank you.
Have we done that? Have we done a climate survey in the past? How many years since the last?
We've only, for the past 4 or 5 years since I've been in this position, we've only done a very brief climate survey in each school that answered about 10 questions. So I'm not sure that we've ever done
More open-ended.
we've never done an open-ended question like this. So,
Good. Good information.
thank you.
All right, item number 2.07, request to accept $94,500 from the DCJS for digital mapping program. Ms. Peterson.
All right, Ms. Robertson just informed me that your agendas were printed before we updated the dollar amount, so the dollar amount should be $98,000.
right.
We received the final award like 2 days ago, and so I had asked her to update the board docs report and last minute changes that got printed beforehand. So basically,
$3,500 more is good.
yes, it's one additional school. So basically, Dr. Stegall has already referenced and shared with you what this is. This is the mapping system, and the DCJS has offered up under the guidance of the current governor. They set aside funds to allow $3,500 per school for us to go out to a specific vendor that they have identified a list, and we have already taken the steps to do this. And our total award will be $98,000. So this is really the formality of, we have a grant contingency in the minor capital fund that covers this. And so this is just, we'll put this on consent agenda next time. We bringing forward to you guys the actual award itself, requesting use of the grant contingency for funding our mapping programs.
Very good. Any questions? All right. Item number 2.08, pay plan updates for transportation.
I feel like we are always trying to do what we can for the pay plan, but every change that we make to the pay plan, we do have to bring before the board. And in preparation for summer school this year, as if you recall, last year was the first year we actually provided full transportation from feeder schools over to Northside High School for our recovery and remediation programs. And we are repeating that the current year. All of this is through the Easter funding. And it's been difficult to attract drivers. And so when we took a look at the pay plan, it was brought to our attention by the transportation supervisors that the rates that were on the current pay plan were slightly under probably where they should be. So we are just asking to have approval to move these rates for the extra runs during the school day from $12 in the pay plan to $17 an hour. And after-school runs, this would be $12 and $19. And what the extra runs are, in the school board budget, this would include extra runs to Governor's School, to and from BCAT in the middle of the day, ones like that that may not already be covered by a full-time bus driver. If they're already covered by a full-time bus driver, then we wouldn't have a need for this payment. The other type of run this would cover are school field trips, where that school will actually pay transportation for those trips. And in the summer school, this is actually covering our in-person health and PE bus trips.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Ray.
thank you. I know it's a moving target, no pun intended, but do you have any idea what extra this would cost? I mean, is there a general number that you have?
So, Ms. King came up with an estimate for the current summer school, about $2,000. And she thinks she can definitely cover that. When it comes to during the school year, we don't have that full estimate, but we will investigate that before we bring the budget back to you for revision.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the second part is just for the bus drivers themselves. Currently, they are $15 in the pay plan, and we recommend moving this up to $20 in the pay plan. The bus driver just running the summer school will be fully paid through the Easter 2 grant, so that will be fully covered without a budgetary impact. So those are items that originally when we brought this forth, we thought we were going to have a meeting next week before, right around payday. So we were hoping to be able to work it out so that we could bring you information and then action. But I'm wondering, Dr. Nicey, and I forgot to mention this to you earlier when we were speaking, if, since we do want to make this retroactive to June 1st, we should go ahead and consider making these changes today and asking for an action. I know we hate doing that, but it may benefit going ahead and getting this taken care of.
Well, this is something that we communicated by email about doing that flat rate for the summer school, and getting that to the higher level. So I know this is not the first time you've heard it. Don't like bringing action on you at the last minute. So, but whatever you're comfortable with.
I don't think anybody's going to much
I don't think
argue
we're gonna-
about paying somebody. I mean, $12 an hour, you're lucky to get anybody.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we got to get the kids to school or we can't do our jobs, so.
And
That's fine. It's not possible to retroactively back pay if we decide at the next meeting to go back in. Is that more work for Mr. Bradshaw, or?
It would be tremendously more work to go back and pay all these timesheets again.
Gotcha. Then I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve this pay raise for the summer school bus drivers.
Second.
Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Ms. Kachani?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ray?
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lincoln?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that. I apologize
Do
for
we-
the late request.
Do we know
That's
how
okay.
many bus drivers we have, like total, like if we're full staffed or compared to what we are,
For summer school or for the regular?
just for regular school year?
Regular school year, we have about 150 some runs. So don't know where we stand as far as this next school year goes.
Yeah, that's
but
just one of my concerns.
it's-
That and food service, I know
Well,
is one of
it
our
a constant.
two, right.
You're absolutely right to bring it up, to keep it in front of everybody, because we always need bus drivers. We're always having to have, Kathy King, Jerry Hubbard driving, mechanics driving. I mean, it's always,
Trying to figure
Live on
out a
the
way
edge.
to attract new people and keep the current ones we have, so.
absolutely. We still have that referral bonus out there, so any employees out there listening who'd like to make that referral, to refer somebody as a driver and they stick around, they can actually benefit from that. So we definitely want to keep that in front of our employees as well.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Peterson.
Thank you.
Item 2.09, summaries of the 2022-23 federal grants. Ms. Hogan and Mr. Riley.
While they're coming up, I want to give a shout out to these two folks in our retreat committee. I appreciate all four board members coming out over the last 2 days. Mr. Ray came out yesterday just to have lunch with all of our principals, assistant principals, and central office. leadership. We had two very beneficial days. Appreciate you all's participation and offering words of encouragement, and appreciate them leading those efforts to make all that happen.
Well, good evening. It's that time of year where we come to the board to share information about our title grants. We have been working on our title applications for Titles 1 through 4. I currently oversee Title 1 and Title 3. For Title 1, we're looking at $1,524,000 for $524,458. And Title 1, as you're aware, currently serves 6 elementary schools here in Roanoke County. And I've provided just a little summary of what some of those monies are used for. The bulk of the monies for Title I is used for personnel services. We do have teachers as well as instructional assistants, one parent involvement specialist that we do have to serve our Title I schools. And then the remainder of the grant we use to provide tutoring services as well as materials and supplies that the schools can use for instruction. So I just wanted to kind of remind you a little bit about Title I. And then the 6 Title I schools that are served, of course, are Burlington, Mountain View, Mount Pleasant, Herman L. Horn, W.E. Cundiff, and Masons Cove. And that will remain the same for this coming school year. For Title III, we're looking at $41,090.94 for that grant for the coming school year. And the monies for our Title III grants are used to serve our English language learners. We use the monies for that grant to provide professional development to our ELL teachers, as well as to provide tutoring to students, and then also to pay for interpreters that we have to use with some of our different parent meetings that we have. And so with that, we'll be submitting that grant actually at the next board meeting to be a consent item for us.
All right, and we'll go back to Title II. That's almost $267,000. There's a lot of detail there. That's really our professional development grant. Most of our professional development for the division will run through that grant. There are some specific things that we have to cover, like Dr. McClung talked about, that are covered in that grant. And then there are several initiatives. If you look at the detail of that grant, it really outlines the professional development goals and plans for the next school year for all our staff. And then the last grant we have in this list is the Title IV-A grant. That's a fairly new grant. It's the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grant that really has 3 kind of buckets of money. One is for well-rounded education, and there's several things you can spend that on. The other one is for safe and healthy students. And then the final one is to improve the use of technology. What we have determined is the need, based on needs assessment we've done, is for the well-rounded piece, is making sure that our students who are economically disadvantaged have access to AP testing and dual enrollment credits. When we talked to our principals and leaders, especially at the high school, they said that was a real need, that there were kids who just couldn't access those because of the cost, so that grant helps with that. A large chunk of this grant helps fund our PBIS implementation. We feel that's extremely important just in terms of the safety and climate of the building. So we work with Dr. McClung and her staff to make sure that we've got the training for that. And then, of course, we do fund some other things, a few other little things do that as well. So that's the title grants. Of course, staff recommendation with any grant is that we accept the money. So, do you guys have any questions? All right.
I don't
Thank you.
believe so.
Thank you.
Are these, are
Yes,
those
sir.
figures similar to what we've received in past years?
It is. What ends up happening is we level fund these based on what we got last year. Once the state gets the money from the federal government, then they'll allocate it to the school divisions. We usually get those allocations in August. They're usually very close to what we have right now. We go back and we amend the grant to the exact dollar amount, and then we resubmit it to the state. But the program itself stays the same.
Gotcha.
How many other divisions are using PBIS?
That's a nationwide program, so in Virginia, a lot of this is under the umbrella of the Virginia Tiered Systems of Support. So It's very common. The key with PBIS is you have to do it with fidelity. One of my favorite stories I heard several years ago at actually one of the national middle school conferences was actually a middle school out in San Bernardino, California, where they have a lot of problems in the neighborhoods and that kind of thing. And their testimony was this: they said, "Look, we used to kind of say we're doing PBIS, which means you kind of say, okay, we kind of check off the boxes, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, we kind of play at it to say we're doing it, but they weren't getting the results." So of course the conclusion is, well, this doesn't work. Well, they weren't doing it with fidelity. They weren't doing it as the program was designed to be done. And once they started doing that, the school turned around. And that's what the evidence, the research says, is when you do it the right way, when you do it with fidelity, which means everybody's got to buy into it. And again, it's not about letting kids off easy. It's about teaching behavior, saying these are our expectations, these are our standards. Say positive things to kids. That's always a good thing. And of course, there are consequences for negative behavior as well. But you got to do it the right way, and make sure that you're actually teaching the behaviors. And when that happens, you see improvements in student behavior, student attendance, teacher attendance, because the climate improves. So we try to acknowledge the student the schools that have met the different tiers of fidelity, and we actually have teams that go from other schools to go visit, meet with students, meet with teachers, see what's going on, and that's that outside of external accountability to say, are you doing this the right way, or are you just
And
kind
do
of
you have the
checking off the
data
box?
to support that? You
You
do?
Dr. McClung can hook you
Oh,
up.
good, okay, I kind of love data, I'm a numbers girl.
Love to share that.
Yeah, and part of that is that, just real briefly, talk about how they track with the Swiss data, because that's huge.
So we also, the schools are trained and have a separate database for entering classroom managed behaviors as well as office managed behaviors. And what that does is it disaggregates data so we can drill down in a heartbeat when we go to team meetings to say, hey, let's look at the data. We're having an increase in tardy behaviors. It'll show us time of day, show us location, behaviors are occurring. One school, there were some issues in a particular hallway. So when they looked at that, they were like, hey, we need some extra staff in this hallway, or let's close this off, because that lended itself to problems. There's a lot of data, and the schools that are moving forward, no matter how slowly, because we don't want to go too quick because that won't last, all are making progress that have put in the effort
time
just to
and
move
effort.
forward. I would love to share some of the data.
Okay, good, yeah.
Love it.
One question, Mr.
Yes, Mr. Ray.
I know I don't want to get into the budget because that's still, we know what's going to happen if when Governor Youngkin has 7 days to make the decision. Do we know, Dr. Nicely, can you find out if the federal free lunch program is still going to be intact for next year?
I can. Ms. Peters may know that off the top of her head if you want to.
It is scheduled to end June
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 30th.
30th, so.
this year. And then we'll go back to processing meals under the regular national school lunch program. and school lunch.
Our next school year.
But we do have, just to let you know, we have several schools that, way back there. We have several schools that look like they will qualify for community eligibility feeding, based on some new statistics that have come through. The nutrition team is looking into that, how we implement it, because it will have impacts on other administrators that outside of the office, or other needs that they use in the districts.
So we'll know that. Good. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Ray. All right, with that, just to mention, our regularly scheduled June meeting was going to be next Thursday, the 16th, but due to the budget numbers going to the governor today from the General Assembly and him having 7 days to approve that, we're going to need probably another work session. We've moved the June meeting to June 23rd at 6 p.m. in order to give us a little bit more time, because we will have to finalize that budget and get it over to the Board of Supervisors for their final meeting on the 28th. So for those of you that may have been planning on attending on the 16th, that meeting is now going to be the 23rd.
We're looking at possibly Monday the 20th for that extra budget work session. We're hoping the Board of Supervisors is going to have some things finalized around the 15th. As you just mentioned, even the state budget's still a bit in flux. I know Ms. Peterson, we've got the calc tool from the VDOE, so we've got some preliminary numbers, but there's also some things still in flux in terms of making, be able to make some decisions around that. So, I guess we can sort of poll, but we're looking at maybe Monday the 20th or possibly Tuesday the 21st, or preferably Monday the 20th with that extra work session. And
Can
then
you do like
followed
a
by the regular
3:30?
meeting. Yes, ma'am, if that would work.
That work for
I'm
you?
good.
Mr. Ray?
Yes.
Okay. We won't worry too much about Mr. Greenway. 20th it is.
All right.
All right, with that, meeting adjourned. Thank you.